Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you guys are new. I'm so excited for today's video because I'm going to be showing you guys some of my favorite palettes to reach for the fall. And the fall is my favorite season of the year, so I always get very inspired to do my makeup at this time of year. So yeah, these are some of my favorite palettes in my whole collection too. I just love to reach for them, and of course I feel so inspired by them right now. So I'm very excited to share them with you guys. I hope that this video can help you remind yourself to look into your own collection and kind of look for some palettes that will remind you of the fall as well. If you have some of these palettes that I'm mentioning, maybe it will remind you and encourage you to reach for them. But yeah, I just really love this type of video. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. I've got 9 palettes in my collection to share with you guys today. Okay, the first one I feel like is my most fall palette. Like, it just looks like fall, but it's the Perfusion Harvest palette. I love this one. You guys might know I have several videos where I have used this on camera. I have a 3 looks 1 palette with this video, and it is just the quintessential fall palette. I think it's so perfect and I just love it so much. This is the perfect fall palette. I feel like you cannot get more autumnal than this. I think it's just so beautiful and nice, and I'm so excited to use this more this season because it just screams fall, and that is what I love. So yeah, the first one had to be this one. This is the Perfusion Harvest palette. I cannot believe this palette is only $10. It is honestly insane to me because the quality is there. Like, it is high quality. So if you guys are wanting a very affordable but very impactful fall palette, this is the one for you. I think it is so underrated. I cannot believe I haven't heard more people talk about this, but I'm telling you, it is amazing. I really, really love this palette. The only negative thing I have about it is that this plastic bit on the top of the packaging is quite cheap feeling, but outside of that, I still think it looks pretty appealing. Like, the actual design of the packaging is nice, but it is what is inside that counts in this one. So if you can look past that, I do not think you'll regret trying this palette out if you don't already have it. But I mean, for $10, I just think it's so amazing. And if you have it in your collection already, I highly suggest you reach for it again because it is perfect for this time of year. Next up, this is one of the newest palettes to my collection. I think it is the newest palette to my collection, and this is the Natasha Denona My Dream palette. I am so surprised by how much I adore this palette. I did receive it in PR via Octoly, so I did not pay my own money for this. However, I'm so glad that I own this. If I were to somehow lose this palette, I would probably repurchase it because I have just enjoyed it that much. But I think that this is such a lovely palette for fall because the tones in this are just so like moody and deep. And when you start to apply them, you can just get so much dimension in your looks. This is one of those duochrome shades where, let me see if I can show you. In the mirror here, you can see that it's green, but then it shifts to this purple shade. So yeah, I don't really love that shade in particular, but I do really like this in general. So I can look past that, you know? And I think that this palette is just so stunning. I mean, it's just honestly really perfect for fall. I feel like it has enough neutrals in it, but it also has those purples if you want to go that route. I don't always love purple shades on myself, but I really want to try, and maybe we'll film the video. But I really want to try and like create a look where I really lean into the purples in this palette because I've been so impressed by all the other shades. I feel like I need to give the purples a fair shot in this palette. So let me know if you would want to see a video where I create a really purple look with this palette. But I feel like it's so perfect for fall because every shade in here just has a little hint of something special. I don't feel like there's any like basic shades in here, and I think that's kind of hard to do with the palette. Even some of these more neutral shades just pack so much of a punch and they look so pretty on the eyes. This is the shade Spontaneous, and it looks like kind of a basic champagne shade in the pan, but when you actually put it on, it has like a little hint of gold to it, more so than it kind of looks in person in the pan. Like, it has sort of a shift between gold and champagne, and I think it just adds so much dimension and kind of just something special into the look. So even what I would consider to be one of the most like basic or boring shades in here just has something special to it, which I can really appreciate, especially because this is of course more of a neutral palette, but I just think that it is honestly very well thought out, and I can really appreciate this palette, and I honestly just think it's so perfect for fall. Every look I ever create out of this palette, I just always feel like it just reminds me of fall, and that is what I love the most about it. I feel like I just really love reaching for this palette. And while I love this palette because it can provide a lot of depth and moodiness, I also sometimes just really like a good neutral look in the fall, which brings us to our next palette, and it is the Juvia's Place The Warrior palette. Now, I go back and forth on this one. I had some bad luck with this creasing when I first tried it, but I feel like with the right eyeshadow primer, I don't struggle with it too much, so I just have to be careful with what I pair it with. This is a warm leaning neutral palette, but I really feel like if you really kind of just amp up the kind of bronzy shades, it just kind of leans a little bit less summery and a little bit more like fall. These shades aren't overly bright, and so I feel like that really lends itself for a nice kind of fall look, with especially some of these darker kind of tones. They just kind of look like leaves to me, which of course are just really autumnal. And then of course you can kind of deepen up any look with this dark brown here. And I just feel like this palette just looks like sweater weather, you know? Like it kind of looks like a mixture of like leaves and sweater weather and coffee all in one. So I just don't think that I could make this video and not include this palette. And honestly, the shades are really stunning in here. You just have to be a little bit careful with how you're gonna pair it with an eyeshadow base. I just have to make sure that I don't pair it with one that's gonna crease on me with. So I just have to give a little bit more attention to it, but I'm okay with it because I really do love the color story, especially for fall. I wanna go ahead and talk about another neutral palette. This one is also newer to me. This is the Myra Chasing Eternity palette, and I did receive this one from a giveaway that they did on Instagram. This one is so pretty. It's like so understated, like kind of like the Natasha Denona My Dream palette. When you put these shades on your eyes, it is just kind of incredible like how different they look, but in a good way. They just can't, I feel like when you have a shade in a pan, they're of course more flat, but when you put them on the lids, they just look like transformed from what was in the pan. Especially the shade here called Eternity was my favorite one, especially when I had it in my Shop My Stash rotation. I loved this shade, and it kind of just looks like boring. Like it looks like a typical neutral palette, I'll give you that, but it's not. I'm telling you guys, I really, really like this one. And they actually just had a palette come out, I would say about a month ago, but it kind of like, I don't really know why it launched right now because it's kind of it kind of looks like a Valentine's Day palette to me, but I really like it and I'm kind of considering picking it up eventually, but it's because of how much I love the formula in this one. And they've got some really kind of grungy tones here that you could of course really amp up on the lid. So I love that. They've got this kind of reddish sort of a shade, like it's got like a reddish brown here. And I just feel like this palette screams fall to me. So I love this. And I love that it was perfect for kind of the summer transitioning into fall as well, because you can also keep it a little bit lighter with some of these transition shades and some lighter shimmer shades. But overall, I just think this screams fall to me. Okay, you guys probably expected to see this palette in this video. This is the most perfect fall palette ever. I feel like I could say that about almost all of the ones in this video, but especially this palette. This is the Nomad America's Parks palette, and you cannot tell me that this palette does not look like fall. I mean, come on. Now, okay, I know it has some colorful shades, and so at first glance, you might think summer. Yes, but no. I say that because if you take out this green column, not a row, if you take out this green column right here, that is fall to me. But you can kind of mix in the greens and add a little bit of like grunge to any look that you use any of these six shades. So I just like when you make a look with this palette, it is fall. Like I can't think of it any other way, especially with these bronzy shades. I mean, you just can't. Like they are fall to me. Like a little bit of depth, especially here, like you've got like the reddish shades, of course, and then mixing like the yellow and the brown in there as well, the purple. I mean, every shade in here just lends itself so beautifully for a fall look. I cannot wait to use this fall, and I just cannot get over the quality of this palette. You guys know this is one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection. I love it, but it is so, so, so perfect for fall. I absolutely love this one. I feel like I could just like sit here and stare at this one because I really need to use it. Like right now, I need to use this. It's so, so pretty. I really, really just love this palette so much. I need to put that in my next Shop My Stash rotation. Okay, next up is a palette that I have on my eyes right now. My lighting I'm still trying to figure out, but I hope that you guys can kind of like see the look well enough. I don't know, we're struggling. I'm also getting over a cold, so just bear with me here, but this is the Huda New Nude palette, and I have this in my Shop My Stash rotation right now, and you guys, I just love this palette. Anytime I kind of feel like bored by it, I just watch it, and then I remember why I love it so much. These marbled shades are so beautiful, it is kind of insane. So I have the shade Charmed over the whole lid, and then I put the shade Crave over about like the first half of it on top of the shade Charmed. Now I did tap a tiny little bit of the Flower Beauty single shade in Quartz, like right here in the front part of the lid, but for the most part, that's what you're seeing, and then a mixture of a ton of mattes in this palette. So yeah, this palette to me though, like I feel like this kind of a color story, people don't really associate with fall as much as some other ones, especially kind of the more bronzy shades or something like the America's Parks palette. But for me, this just reminds me of like cranberry sauce, like at Thanksgiving. I just feel like I cannot make this video and not mention this palette. To me, like the cranberry tones are fall also. It's like you have like the burnt grungy sort of a look, and then you have like the cranberry rich sort of a look too. And those are the two kinds of looks for me that make up fall, with a little bit of like a neutral sort of a vibe in there too. So yeah, this is such a fall palette for me, and I've really been enjoying having it in my Shop My Stash lately. I love that one. We just got 3 more. This next one is my smallest one. This is the Natasha Denona Ayanna palette. This is it's not really a mini, but it's just a 5-pan palette. I just think this is such a nice mini fall palette. It's so neutral, but it has a little bit of depth. It has a little bit of grunge, especially these 2 shimmer shades are so fall-like to me. I just think that they're so pretty. I really, really love this palette. I need to use it more. And especially, I didn't swatch this one, I swatched every other shade, but this shade here is one of my absolute favorites. Yeah, I love this palette, and I think it's such a nice one for fall, especially because it's just kind of small. So if you were to travel or something, this would be a perfect palette to travel with. Okay, next to last, we have the Persona Identity palette. I think this is like the perfect neutral fall kind of a palette. This one, I will say I don't use quite as much because it does lean a little bit deeper than what I typically go for, but I still really love this. I think it's such a perfect palette for fall. I mean, I think it's kind of self-explanatory. Like every tone in this palette is fall to me. It's kind of muted. It's not overly bright, but it's still super grungy. And it still has a couple little pops of sort of a color, but it's a muted color, you know? And so you have like this shade here called Bombshell, which is a muted green. Then you have some muted colors here called Audacious and Chic that are in a matte formulation. So I just feel like it has a lot of variety, but you're not going to get anything super kind of light and airy out of this unless you were to just reach into like these 2 shades. It really does have a lot of depth, and these matte shades pack a punch. And I feel like the time for that, more than any, you can wear whatever makeup you want any time of year. I definitely do that. I use these palettes all year round. But for me, I do feel really inspired in the fall to wear a more grungy, deep, kind of sultry sort of a look. So I definitely feel like I reach for this palette more in the fall than I do any other time. Maybe the winter, just because it's colder out, so I feel like the deeper colors just kind of go with that. I just think it really encompasses fall. So I do really like this one. It's not my absolute favorite in my entire collection by any means, but I still have it in my collection for a reason, that's for sure. And one of my newest palettes, I don't know, I got this one before the My Dream palette. I just decorated it, so I don't want to like show you guys because that's coming up in a video. But this is the Kathleen Lights and Il Maquillage palette called the Disco Fox palette. I feel like this one is kind of that like summer leaning into fall, but also fall leaning into winter. So I feel like it's like your perfect fall neutral palette, more so than the Persona one, because it's also perfect for those transitional areas like summer to fall and fall to winter. And the reason I say that is because it does have some colorful shades here, which I kind of associate colors with spring and summer, like these lighter kind of sparkly shades, as well as even maybe this orange one. But then you have all of these neutrals and especially these glitzy kind of shimmers. And I just feel like all of them paired together are like the perfect palette, kind of taking you from summer all the way into winter. And I just feel like it's it's like understated fall. Like it's very light in comparison, but you can build these shades up. Like it might look a little bit lighter and a little bit more subdued in the actual pans, but when you put them on the lid, like they're actually pretty deep. I feel like these shimmers in particular just lend themselves well for the holidays too, because they're so just glittery and a little chunky, but they're drier. So they're so weird. Like they're really hard to explain because they are a little bit more chunky and dusty, but not in like a cheap way. Like I feel like sometimes dry shimmers that are a little bit more chalky, or not even, no, these aren't chalky. I feel like a lot of times drier shimmers are more chalky and they don't have a lot of pigmentation. These are dry, but they have a ton of payoff. They have a ton of glitter in them, but you can maybe see here, I mean, they're pretty dusty. Like they kind of pick up and there's a little kick up, I guess, in the pan from when you pick the shade up. I just feel like this palette is honestly pretty perfect for fall, and I think that it's a little bit like interesting. Like even though it's a neutral palette, I feel like when you really start to think about it, there's a lot you can do with it. I've really been enjoying this one as well, but that is the 9th palette that I have to share with you guys. And I think out of all the palettes in my collection, those are just the most fall-like palettes. And I'm so excited to be using them more this season. So let me know down below what kind of palettes you like to reach for the fall. Would your perfect fall palettes kind of look like the 9 that I just showed you? Or do you reach for rainbow or pastel shades in the fall? I personally reach for like all of my makeup all year round, but I just feel like in the fall it's kind of fun to just feel a little bit more inspired by the grunge and the sweater weather. But thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy it, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more content from me. Be sure to let me know if there's any palettes I mentioned in today's video that you want to see me create a fall inspired look with. I would really love that type of a video. But with that being said, that's going to be it for today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!